So for the sake of people who are dependent on your typical Irish economist for their analysis, what's really going on with the Irish economy?
Well, I tell you, I saw something in today's paper that I thought was just remarkable. There's a big story that the now troubles in Italy and how they're going to impact Irish banks. So this is just an insult to injury. I mean, the Irish people have been told lies for years now, and this new budget that they're being asked to accept, the austerity budget, supposedly to close the chapter on this banking nightmare. And yet there's a lot more coming from the banking sector from other countries, and because there's nobody standing up to this wave, this global wave of banking fraud, and the political establishment in Ireland doesn't seem to get it. They don't seem to understand who they're fighting, and they don't understand the wars, the weapons that are involved in this war, and they're losing in a big way.
It ties into the whole thing where they say that Ireland got bailed out, but Ireland didn't really get bailed out, did it? It was European banks.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the banks got bailed out, then the people got stuck with the bill. So that's not like the Irish people got bailed out. No, they were. It was a formalization of a very corrupt contract to begin with, and the Anglo-Irish bond that they just paid. There's no reason to pay it. It's an unsecured bond, which by definition means that the person making the loan knows before they make the loan that there's a good chance they won't get paid. Well, that's right, they weren't going to get paid. So for the Irish government to say, well, we're going to pay you even though we're not obligated to pay you, I'd like a deal like that. Why can't I go down to the Irish government and say, I made a really wanky deal with you, you don't have to pay me, but pay me anyway.
And because you have all the politicians and the analysts, the economists telling us, oh, we took part in this, it's our fault, as if these are our debts. But I never.
Yeah, but they were missold. They were sold bonds and debt that violated basic securities laws. It's like tainted meat. If someone sold you tainted meat and you got sick, you'd be upset, and you'd want the person who sold you that tainted meat to have some accountability. And the person who sold you the tainted meat can't blame you for getting sick, which is what these banks are doing. They're saying, we blame you for getting sick on the bonds that the illegal transactions that we engaged in. It's all your fault. So how does that doesn't work?
And who are the markets? Because we're all told, we have to bow down to the markets.
Yeah.
So what are they talking about there?
Well, they're talking about fear, basically, because the markets ordinarily are somewhat anodyne and inert. They simply match up buyers and sellers. It's like a utility function. But since a few predatory banks have seized control of the markets, now they become dangerous, and they use markets as a threat to coerce governments into accepting terrible deals, who then have to turn around and impose austerity measures to pay for those terrible deals. So markets in the hands of what I call financial terrorists become weapons of mass financial destruction. Ordinarily, there's nothing, fertilizer is fertilizer until you mix it up and create a fertilizer bomb. Then it becomes a destructive bomb. Markets themselves, there's nothing particularly evil or destructive about a market per se, but if you put it in the hands of a premeditated financial terrorist act, they become weapons of mass financial destruction, and that's exactly what we're seeing.
And why do you think the Irish media treat you the way they do? Like a kind of a comic, not to be taken serious?
Well, this is always the case when the conflict of interest want to remain hidden. The Irish media is completely conflicted in this chapter of banking fraud, and when they have no facts to argue my points or others' points, they resort to ad hominem attacks. But they can't argue these points in terms of the actual underlying economics. They can't argue the points in terms of historical precedent. They have nothing to come back with other than ad hominem attacks, which is what they use. I mean, anyone who hears the mainstream media make a comment like this about what I'm saying, given my background, given my success, given my track record, it should immediately should be the tip to them that what I'm saying has obviously quite threatening to an entrenched, conflicted of interest oligopoly and media types. Okay. I thought they were leaving without me. That's usually the case. I'll be home alone here. I'll be stuck in Kilkenny, which is Dublin, which is fine for me. You know, I'll just stay here.
So, last question then: what would happen if Ireland went to the punt tomorrow? Pound.
Well, they'd go through a gut-wrenching transition, and it would be economic turmoil, and there would be a huge change.
We're going through economic turmoil right now, though.
Well, my point is either, I use the analogy of the Band-Aid. Either you rip it off quickly or you rip it off slowly. If you went to the punt, it would be a fast pain suffer for a year or so, 2 years. But now you're suffering. It's going to last for 10 or 20 years, and and you lose your sovereignty. So at least with the short-term pain, it's short-term. Plus, you keep your sovereignty.
Yeah.
So. And this is clearly in the best interest of the country. What's missing is leadership. I mean, there's no leadership, obviously, in Ireland or in Greece or these other countries that understands the nature of the problem, and so they're attacking it. They're addressing it with completely inadequately. Just an inadequate response. They don't understand the dimensions of the attack that's being waged upon them, and they don't even understand how finances can be used as an offensive way to grab property and influence. They assume that if a war has got to involve bomber planes and tanks and rockets, and that's the only way to wage a war, to gain property and influence in a country. But if you're using debt, and then that is illegally induced, and then forcing people to pay for it, in ways that they have to sell their assets and property, this exact same end result. They might as well have just sent in a tank and seized control of these valuable assets in Ireland. These assets of Ireland, these national assets, are being sold into the international market along with the loss of sovereignty. So the valuable assets of the country are no longer going to be benefiting the citizens of the country. So it's a classic leveraged buyout, if you will. You used to see this on Wall Street all the time. You use debt to buy a company, then you sell off bits of the company to pay off the debt and keep what's left over. Here they're using the same technique. The IMF is bankrupt, by the way. They have to borrow money themselves. They use the borrowed money to essentially buy Ireland. Then they sell all the valuable parts off to the international consortium, and whatever left over they keep for themselves as profit. But the Irish people get nothing. They lose their sovereignty, and it's completely avoidable. It's completely avoidable. There's no need for it to go down like this.
Well, one of the things I'm trying to do is just retake the narrative and tell it, how it is. And I think that's why I'm delighted to talk to you, because you're one of the few people out there that will tell it like it is.
So, well, as I said in the Grand Social, there's a need for independent media. So, totally support what you're doing. There needs to be a lot of independent media, because the mainstream media, their message is influenced by, they have a conflict of interest, clearly, because they're totally in debt. RTE and all the mainstream media outlets are up to their eyeballs in debt. They're dancing to the same jig as the property developers and everyone else who is sucked into the debt vortex. And independent media might be small, but you're not in debt. So therefore you're not beholden to the person holding the debt strings. So in this case, not having a huge balance sheet is a huge asset, actually, because now you can say, well, this is exactly what's going on. And you won't get a call from your banker saying, if you don't stop telling people the truth, we're going to cut your credit lines, which is what happens at RTE and these other outlets. They're threatened every single day by their bankers, the banking terrorists.
All right, thanks, Max. Thanks
Super, anytime.